you can sign that form.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's right there.
All I needed was a pen. Rich, could I borrow that bank pen there? Sure can. I've had my shots. Oh, shit. I got it.
We're being filmed.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, he went over the table, okay? He went over the table on me. I couldn't control him.
No, nothing in my area, no, because it would just be Paul and, Scott, the only two we're waiting for.
Scott said he's on his way.
Yeah.
Going back.
Rachel and,
Oh, son of a.
John, you called me. Oh, is it 998 1477? Is that John?
I'll get it.
that's,
He's got experience.
oh, he said I'm in, so that must be him, yeah.
Anything else anybody need? Here.
I'm allowing him to talk.
Somebody's gotta come
Hey,
in.
John, can you hear us? John?
Yes, I can.
are you there? Okay.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We're just waiting for, Paul, Rochelle, and Scott.
Okay.
How busy are you?
Crazy. Well, one thing that's making me even busier is my truck is giving me a bad time. Keeps breaking down. Had a new radiator put in yesterday. Today it overheated. Left me on the side of the road. Had to cool down, got a little further, side of the road. Lost hours trying to get this last load to the job. The other problem is I'm doing the septic system for these people, but I gotta go through their driveway. These people thought it was gonna be a 2-day job. They're beside themselves. I see that light at the end of the tunnel, fucking train runs me over.
Welcome to the party.
I forgot you were listening, Chuck.
And the button, right? Greetings.
Sorry, I'm tardy. How you doing, bud?
Can I have you sign that paper and release that real quick?
Sure.
That's the office form for Tom Tiffany.
Oh, yes.
Then I can get that out of the way and I can get lost in the shuffle. Excellent, thank you.
Well, is everybody ready?
Yep, John's on the line.
Oh, hi, John.
There.
How are you? Oh, we don't get to see you though, huh?
No.
Okay. I'll call the,
You don't wanna wait for it.
huh?
Paul?
I actually have not heard from Paula, so I'm not really sure.
Want to wait a few more minutes?
Up to you, you're,
We'll wait till 10 after.
okay.
That gives them a couple minutes. John, I want to talk to you the next day or so if you're going to be in. I have a customer that has a handicapped child and he'd like to have a garage roll flat into the house, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to achieve that with keeping our nose clean for our code.
Okay, no problem.
Well, it was a ramp.
Yeah, well, ramp's one thing, but he wants the whole floor brought up, so.
Okay.
Seriously handicapped kid, I mean, on oxygen.
What do you mean, the floor was?
Floor, so he can go right into the house. Monolithic floor. From the concrete floor of the garage to the house floor.
Oh, I
That
see, yeah.
That wouldn't really be an issue, Scotty, because it would be similar to having a garage under. And you would just, there's no need for a gas curb. And then, of course, you would just, slope the garage floor towards
Like I
the big
normally
door.
do.
Yeah. So it
Okay,
really wouldn't.
I thought we had to have a minimum of 4 inches or 3 inches in the step.
No, they did away with that.
Yeah. Then I gotta find a good way to put material against the framing of the house so when you pour concrete against it, someday it doesn't rot out.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be the biggest challenge.
Why don't you just leave a gully, steel plated?
Or even AZEC.
What's that?
Even AZEC.
Is it? Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
not steel plate, over the gully,
Right.
so the cement doesn't go up against the house?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Pour it right into the concrete so there's no grump.
Okay, it's 10 after 6. I'll call the Alternative Housing Committee meeting to order at 10 after 6 p.m. on May 19th, 2021. Okay, so we have our agenda here. Any changes to the agenda?
No, there is not.
I will accept a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Okay,
I'll second it.
motion by Paul, what's your first name again? Frank. Seconded by Frank. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
John?
Roger, aye.
Oh, aye.
Bill O'Neill, aye. Scott, aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, old business.
Do you want me to just explain that to you?
Yeah.
So when I was doing the minutes, I noticed that, when the motion was made for Frank, you guys didn't vote. So can you just, you guys can just go ahead and vote on it.
Did we have a motion on the floor?
There was a motion and it was seconded.
Okay.
Well, we were thinking about it.
Okay, we'll have a little delay in the, of the voting from the motion we had at the last meeting. All those in favor of having Frank as vice chair?
Roger, aye.
Oh, aye.
Bill, aye.
Frank, aye.
Scott, aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, good. That's, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, let's start off with the zoning ordinance from Epsom, Dover, and Hampton.
Yep, so I haven't heard, well, I haven't heard because I haven't had a chance to get in touch with, Epsom or Hampton yet. But, I did get information from Dover. It was really helpful. And they really don't have their own sort of tiny home regulation. They just sort of used what they had in place already. But they did have to change their regulation that only allowed like the one single family, on a lot. So that was, they have to change that around. 'Cause
Right, so
you know,
that's
kinda
something
like
that
what we
yet,
have still is,
that's what they have yet to do.
you know, yeah, no, they
They
did
did
go
that.
ahead, they did go ahead and change that, and they used what was in place.
What was their density that they, I suppose that's part of the thing we should start to put on the flow chart once we get some more information coming in.
Right, okay, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Not sure is always fine.
Yeah.
Well, I think the important thing to mention is she said was, they wanted to do this, but they had to be creative. So creative means
Well,
you just start moving the rules.
right, I mean, it's a whole new ballgame because none of this fits the mold, shall we say.
So I'm a little confused. I read what Jessica said, and I read a little bit of the minutes. But it seems like Dover has they seem to be able to change rules and regulations within their own zoning requirements.
Yeah,
Okay, and is that what we can do in Alton? or-
No, they're a city charter, and that's usually, a lot of stuff is handled by the aldermen and things of that nature. So their form of government is a little bit different than our form of government, right?
So we technically couldn't alter or change that. We would have to go to the.
Well, we might be able to take a backbone out of the ordinance, I mean, or something out of the ordinance. I mean,
No, we just have to do a whole process. I mean, we can't do it overnight. If we want to do this, then we got to think about it. And we got to have the townspeople want to do it. And then you change the zoning ordinances to do it. The same way they did it, except that we have a longer process.
And we have,
We have to make a case for tiny homes, seasonal homes, cabins that are not in our ordinances today.
correct.
Is that what we need to do?
Right, so what we talk about here gets, you know, brought over to the ZAC committee, and then the ZAC committee, you know, then takes that stuff and brings it to the planning board.
Yeah, and
And then it
they
goes
might
to the
massage it
public
even more,
Right.
the ZAC committee.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, we're just a subcommittee really of the ZAC committee.
And the trouble with the Dover thing is they have water and sewer readily available. So that's a big nut to crack in our situation that we don't have that. So,
And I noticed this particular 44 acres, 384 square feet is only on 7 acres. So it had to have.
It is on water and sewer.
yeah,
Had to
And
have-
Dover's gonna bend over backwards to get this approved because it's labeled as workforce housing.
Right, and that fits a lot of categories for them.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
in fact, it's gonna fit our categories, because the cost of our housing is not what it was the last time we talked about workforce housing.
well, okay, so well, you said the workforce housing, we didn't, that's not the word.
Right, inclusionary zoning.
I mean, when workforce housing came down the street last time, it wasn't a tiny home. It was
No,
just it was a decent home that was affordable, that was actually priced pretty high. Wasn't
Well,
it? It wasn't a lawn shed.
Well, that's, I think the Belknap County thing was like $60,000 mean family income in the county. And so whatever $60,000, I might be wrong on the numbers, whatever that can buy in the mortgage market, that's what hopefully these houses could be tailored into fitting. So the people, the firemen, the people that had, you know, workforce jobs could
Right.
afford.
And I think that was like $300,000 homes.
Probably.
I think if you want a third of your income towards mortgage,
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
so take 6 times 3, it's 180,000.
Yeah, you ain't gonna get a house for $180,000.
No.
John, did you say something?
I was saying that if I remember the number correctly, it was like 225 to 250. So that was several years ago. 300 now is, you know, as
It's
far as
not-
market.
Yeah, it's basically not an achievable number.
Yeah,
Right.
so I mean, I don't see how you would identify the tiny house with the workforce housing. I mean, most of the places where I saw,
Well-
these tiny houses were for the homeless and the veterans. Building them all over the place for the homeless and the veterans.
Yep, but the 384 square feet is not necessarily the thing. That's one that fits a mobile tiny house. But you can have a stationary tiny house with a
These
lot more
were-
square feet.
These were stationary.
Right, so that wouldn't be 384 square feet, or the 400 square feet, which is the maximum by a mobile unit. Am I correct on that, I think? Yeah. And so, you know, someone could have, let's say, I know up in Maine, they did for a veterans situation up there, right on the grounds of the Veterans Hospital. They did 1 and 2 bedroom little houses, like 700 square feet, and these veterans could stay in them and rent them at that big, but the same idea could be purchased.
Right. And I think that's a great idea for the veterans. Little less the homeless. Some people are homeless because that's the way they want to be.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And some are homeless because they're useless. So building them houses, I'm just, you know.
No, I mean, this would be more of a workforce housing situation. The workforce housing gets the price right under what John just said, you know, 225, you can get a 700 square foot house maybe in that market. But you have to, the density in the land has to be more than it is, because you can't throw a $75,000, $80,000 lot underneath that and make it affordable again.
Right.
You know, so that's what we got to figure out the density. And I have called Rainey Pelletier several times. The latest one was this morning, and still nothing. So, but I think I know where I can get his cell phone number.
I'll look.
So when you're doing, the open space subdivisions, which aren't even allowed in the rules section, because that's, well, I think what we're gonna try and do is get it allowed. Because then
Yes.
you can have, on a big parcel, you can get 30 or 40 units clustered.
Right.
Right.
And that makes the numbers work.
And the only place you're gonna get a parcel large enough is gonna be in the rural. zone.
Right. And, you know, in my personal opinion, if you had a cabin colony, if you're not gonna be on the lake, you might as well be in the woods, you know, and in the more rural zone can support that. And that's a pretty wide open zone, for, you know, for things you can put in them. So. Go
I
ahead.
just have a question. So we may be talking about different size houses and different zoning for those different size houses, like a 400 square foot, like a tiny house, right?
Yeah.
And then something more affordable housing, which is a little bit bigger with maybe a couple of bedrooms, but still, you know, like you said, 3 times your income for a family to be able to afford. So are we breaking this up into like different?
We're gonna have to.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have to, because there's several different breeds of cats here,
Right,
you know?
right.
So I guess the first thing we have to do is, let's identify our first styles of homes we'd like to do. And then we can start to build underneath that. So the first one we talked about was a mobile tiny house scenario. Would that be correct in saying that?
On wheels?
On wheels.
So that would be your.
That is probably the cheapest.
It's similar to a park model, yes, but a lot of these things are personal made and things of this nature. But we probably ought to have some design requirements, because, you know, can't look like the hillbillies out in the woods
All right,
either.
well, so I'll just say this, we were just talking about the hillbillies. One of the tiny houses I looked at was a school bus. And he made his tiny house inside. So he's got wheels, he's got a tiny house.
Yeah.
All
John,
right.
do you have any input on that type of idea? Because I think that's,
Yeah.
you would.
I mean, essentially, if it's on wheels, it's an RV. That the way that New Hampshire law and virtually all the zoning ordinances are structured. If it's under 400 square feet and it's on wheels, it's an RV. So, and that's the way our zoning ordinance looks at it also.
Yeah.
Like Roger said, they're calling a tiny home, you know, what, at that point, do we say, okay, it could be trailer mounted only or whatever? But the issue is, you know, that's all I have. Someone comes to me, and I've had this question regularly. Someone comes to me, says, I just want to build I want a tiny home. I want to put it on my land. And if it's on wheels, the answer is no. If you want to build a 384 square foot house on your land, on a tube permanent foundation, the answer is yes. But, you know, with tiny home, if you're looking to do a development, like we talked about, conservation subdivision, you know, to me, that's a good idea. But the whole idea of a conservation subdivision anyways is a good idea to me. Because it allows, you know, a little, you have to have a minimum required, and we know that, like in the rural residential zone. We can do multifamilies on there, but you got to have X amount of acres per, and that for the subdivision. You know, and like Meredith does conservation subdivisions, and they have for years. And how it's set up is that you have to have a minimum tract size. So let's say in the residential zone in Meredith, if you have a 10-acre tract size, you need to have a quarter acre. Each unit can be a quarter acre. So essentially on a 10-acre, go ahead.
Similar to our mobile home park, 10,000 square foot lot.
Right.
Okay.
The area. Yeah, 10,000 square foot area dedicated each one. So yes, it's a very similar step. A minimum lots, overall lot size, and then minimum size available for each dwelling unit. And that leaves green area, leaves whatever else.
That's right. Then the green, well, let's put it this way, is what we just said in that with a mobile home park, if we use 10-acre minimum lots, you're still beating up an acre for 4 dwellings. And to get your density, you're gonna use all 10 acres. I was kind of hoping that we could have some green space as a result of that.
No, yeah, you would. And that's I guess the mobile home park wasn't a real good example.
Right.
But with a conservation subdivision, you have to have, there's a whole number series and a yield plan on, but, let's see, will not exceed the number of yield from a single family subdivision, yeah. So, but yeah, you would, so let's say on a 10-acre lot, you could have 10 units and they have to have a quarter acre each, and then the rest is green space.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Now, so I'm not certain whether it actually went to the voters or if it was just discussed on the planning board. But when these conservation type developments were discussed before, it wasn't met with.
No, because the Agenda 21 people, I think that's the number, they came out of the woodwork.
Okay.
Yes.
So did it go to the voters or was it just too miserable?
No, it never went to the voters. I don't think it did.
Because.
I think that was discussed at the ZAC meeting,
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was like, I mean, they didn't want, it makes so much sense.
It does, it really does. I've said for ages that, you know, condense them into, screw up a few acres and leave a lot of it natural. I mean, I just
Right.
think that makes sense.
Right.
And that's,
And even-
that's a lot of places that do it. It's not an unusual thing. You know,
Well, and I think that's the perfect element for this type of thing, you know, rather than, you know, putting one next to my house, because I don't want one next to my house. But if you had a development, well, you can't, because I own it all around my house. But if you had, you know, an area that, you know, what I say is if you don't like it, don't go there. And that's, so all these people like it, they can go there, you know. I
Well,
don't like
yeah,
it, I don't go there.
There are many people that move from other areas, and that, you know, I've met with them, and they says, well, the only problem we don't like about Alton is there's no neighborhoods. I says, well, we're spread out.
Well, there is, but they're all, you know, subdivisions.
Right.
Like you have a
Yeah.
neighborhood, Lakewood's a neighborhood, but the problem is that to make a neighborhood these days, it costs so much money, the houses are expensive, the people are snooty, and they don't go up.
Yep. Oh, my subdivision, every Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, the neighbors get together and have a campfire and hobnob.
Oh, is that right?
It's crazy.
I've never seen them pop up.
No. But anyway, so to sum up the mobile tiny house, I guess we'll have a mobile, camper RV park regs would fall into place. So therefore, the septic building would be whatever the state is with RVs, so that would be covered there. The reason I wanted to get a hold of Rainey is to see if any of that can come across into the small houses. Because, John, as you're well aware, that, you know, you have to have, there's no more one bedroom or a studio apartments, it has to be a 2-bedroom design, correct?
right.
Right, so
Now,
that,
now I don't know how that would be viewed with a community system. If you
yeah, that's why I'm trying to get a hold of Rainey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other item that I didn't quite understand with the Dover tiny houses. They don't regulate the people that can live there. There's no regulation on how many people can live there. So I mean, whereas, you know, when you got a family, you've got to have so many.
You don't want it like a shoe, in other words.
Yeah. Well, I've seen them where, the bed is used 24 hours a day.
Right.
And, it's stacked up all over the place, That's the element you can have, so you gotta think about
We
that.
gotta be careful of that.
You have to be careful, they have to consider it anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely consider that.
if you were to take the prototype of the mobile home, what would be the criteria? 10,000 square feet per unit,
For dwelling unit.
dwelling unit, okay? Is there a size component that can be?
Well, if this would, go ahead, John.
Well, I was thinking about your size question, Frank, that, if you were, let's say that if we were going to do a tiny home development where the houses didn't exceed 400 square feet, or 500, let's say 500, they don't exceed 500 square feet.
Okay.
Then if someone's going to come in and want to do that, then the required area for each one could be smaller than, say, if someone come in to do a conservation subdivision and they're going to do 1,800 square foot. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That way yes, you would get fewer houses to a 10-acre lot, but you would also not be taxing the property as much. So,
Okay,
I don't know if
so,
that's making any sense at
so
all.
let's take an example. I'm always good with doing an example, makes me think about it. So let's take let's say that somebody came in and had 40 acres. I'm just using this as an example. And they wanted to put 20 to 25 units on that in some sort of configuration, okay? That would give, a reasonable amount of conservation land, okay? If we required that the space requirements were somewhere around 10 or 15,000 square feet, okay, for each, housing unit, okay? And let's say it was no more than 500. So what kind of infrastructure would we be, if we're using the, mobile, the RV, parks, what kind of infrastructure would we require, knowing full well that a lot of the land is not gonna be used, it's gonna be conservation land, okay, but, and it's, I would imagine the homes would be clustered to some extent in the
Well, they'd have 10,000 square foot lots.
10,000 square foot lots.
And the way to look at that is if you drive into Eagles Rest,
Yes,
that's what you'll see. That type of density.
okay, that kind of density.
Yeah,
So-
those lots are bigger than 10,000.
I don't think so.
No?
What's that?
Okay, so what would be the infrastructure requirements? Okay, because now, you know,
I think each lot would be a different scenario because of the terrain. You know, you're gonna have to take a 20-acre lot, now you're gonna take your 25-foot or 25% slopes out in your wetlands, and then you can have that amount of usable land, divide that by 10,000, that's gonna tell you how many units you can get.
Right.
And then when you cluster them down, you talk about infrastructure, Frank, you're gonna, regardless, you'll need septic / sewer, and roads and drainage, electricity. The advantage of a conservation subdivision versus a standard subdivision is that, you know, with a standard subdivision, if you, in the rural zone, you have to have a 2-acre lot for each house when you do a standard subdivision. So that almost takes out the ability to do a community septic because you're now getting into, you know, quite a distance. You're pumping. Scott, correct me if you think I'm wrong. But
No, you're 100% on track.
and you're also, what you're saving, with a conservation subdivision with things clustered together, you can better use a community septic system. And we have several that are like this. Cedar Cove, they have, well, Frank, you guys got a community septic system there in Tranquility, correct?
yeah.
And
That-
a community well.
Says you have a smaller lot there, too.
We each have our own well, but the septic
Yeah.
system is, community.
See, like Eagles Rest has their own. Eagles Rest has their own water system that services. They have wells that service the whole thing, and it's a community septic. That's a real good example of what we're talking about. Except I think that takes up the majority of the lot. I don't think it's the larger lot. But in this case, things will be clustered together. It cuts down on the cost for the developer for development of roads. Now you're not winding a road. You know, Roger, there on New Durham Road, that road would have been, what, 3/4 to a mile up in there? You know, so now you're now keeping it up front like you're working on with the duplexes. So it's more appealing to developers because they're not stringing out the cost of these things all over, if that makes sense. So, you know, everything costs, the total cost is less for them as far as infrastructure because they don't have to have as extensive an infrastructure as you would with a traditional subdivision.
Right. Yeah, so, you know, maybe, I'm just gonna throw out a number as just a starting point. If we use the occupancy factor of multiply like a 10-acre minimum to start one of these projects. And so if anybody comes in with 60 acres, whatever, use a 0.5 factor, half a unit per acre. Would I say that right? No, I don't think so. Let me try to reword that. You know, let's say this would be the density. So if you could fit 5 of these on a 10-acre lot. Okay, 5 small
Yep.
homes or cabins.
Why wouldn't you be able to? 5 of these on a 10-acre lot?
Well, remember, we've got to save some green space.
Well, the ones that I've been looking at, they're all right together, bang, bang, bang. Some of them are like little
Yeah,
condos.
those are probably on water and sewer.
Well, this would be community sewer and community water.
So you'd have a main road, then you'd have a little cul-de-sac with 6 units. Those 6 units there would be on one septic and one well. Go up a little ways, a little further, you'd have another pot of 6.
Or you could have a one well service the whole property, because
Right.
water line running is a whole bunch cheaper to run than sewer lines.
Right.
And things of that
Well,
nature.
not for nothing, but one thing you don't wanna go over 9, because once you go to 10, then you get into the whole, testing and
Water management system.
water management.
Yeah, well, that's gonna be part of it.
Not if you only go 9 on the well and then do another well.
Okay, yeah, well, that's a good factor.
And that would be the developer's choice.
Right, right. But I was trying to figure a factor, you know?
Yep.
No more than 5 of these units for a 10-acre parcel. If you have 150 of them.
What's the current zoning for a cluster subdivision in Alton?
0, isn't it?
We don't have one.
You don't have a conservation?
No,
No.
no, not at all, nothing.
When cluster
You have a
housing,
cluster, because I was gonna try and do it in the rural section, was told I couldn't do it, but I could in another zone.
The rural residential is the only one that will do a yield plan like that.
And what is
And
that?
But that's for the duplexes. I don't have the zoning ordinance in front of me.
Well, the rural residential allows you to have a 1-acre lot versus a 2-acre lot.
Yeah.
So you can have stronger density there. I think the road frontage is 150 versus 200, I think, yep. And so that would be the nuts and bolts changes, but you can do multifamily in that, well, you look at your table of uses, basically, and that will tell you
Yeah.
what's available to do.
Could almost go with the condo way also, density.
Right, but, well, I think the condo will work in that density as it is anyway, or even in the rural zone, I think we could still do a condo project.
Yeah. Well, in the rural residential, you have to have, because with Rogers duplexes that he's doing there is a similar idea what we're talking about.
Yes, it is.
But he has to have, I don't remember the number right off the top of my head, but rural residential zone is the only zone in town where we can do this.
Right.
And it was only if it's multifamily or duplexes. It can't be done you can't put on that zone, we can't cluster single-family homes like a conservation subdivision normally would. We could do it for duplexes and multifamily.
All right, so Scott, your suggestion would be that the criteria would be, if we use we're just using a 40-acre piece, that no more than 5 could be put on 10 acres. Right. Okay, which means it's 2 acres, it's 2 acres per
Dwelling unit. Which is like in the rural zone, which it is currently.
which is what it is currently, but it's on one lot, 60-acre, 40-acre lot, then they could technically, if everything went the way they wanted to do it, they would be able to get 20 units on that 40 acres. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Or if we think 7 per 10 acres is.
Yeah, right.
Whatever, you know?
Whatever, you're trying to get to a density number.
Right.
Okay. And then, of course, the infrastructure would be, roads, sewer, water, electricity, okay? And because they're clustered, I guess we're saying that would minimize the impact by a developer based on our current regulations.
exactly. Now,
And one of these other things on this thing is that all the interior roads would remain to be held by the association developer or whomever.
Okay,
So there would not be a town road. And I think that's a really important thing that we figure here. We don't want to load up the town with any more roads, because you do the math on a subdivision and it costs you, what, $13,000 or whatever to educate a kid, and there's 1.3 per household. The math just does not work on collecting property taxes to send the kids to school. So it becomes, they're really not the best business for a town.
Right, so while you're on that subject, I mean, like he was just talking about the water, the well, the electricity, the roads. As you well know, that's all big money. And now you-
$5,500 a pole.
And now you're gonna, oh, I paid more than that. Oh, well, I got other stuff too, but anyway, so all those expenses, now you're gonna put a tool shed in there and expect that to pay back on all that infrastructure you put
See,
in?
now, what the
Well,
problem.
again, that's to the developer. Where it's our,
All right, so
What
who's gonna,
we want-
who's gonna develop these things?
Well,
Well,
the thing is,
what we want,
Go ahead, John, go ahead.
our goal is to provide the opportunity. So, and I'm sitting here looking at the Meredith, Conservation Subdivision, and the way that they say it is that as far as figuring density, you can't have any more density than you would in a conventional subdivision. So let's say we've got a 10-acre lot in the rural residential zone. If you've got 10 working acres, you could have 10 single-family homes on that on individual lots. So now let's say we want to do a conservation subdivision. You can only have a total of 10 units, but now each unit only has to have a quarter acre dedicated to it physically. Like the 10,000 square foot we're talking about, like a mobile home. So in that case, you would only be using 2.5 acres of that 10 acres, and everything could potentially be clustered into a 2.5 acre area. That's what the conservation subdivision does.
Most every town is like that. You have,
Excuse me?
before you even come in with a cluster subdivision, you have to sit there and show them a conventional subdivision, maxed out.
It's called the yield plan, and that's where you say, okay, I've got this, take out your wetlands, your slopes and stuff, and say, okay, this is what I could have. I could get 10 single-family homes on this lot, the total lot, but instead I want to do a conservation subdivision, and I only am required to have a quarter acre per home of physical area, which, again, that lets you, everything gets kind of clustered in one area, and you could be more than that. I mean, you say, okay, I want it to be, use 5 acres to do the 10 houses, but still leave 5 acres of green area.
Most towns require 50% open space.
Okay. Well, I mean, and that's something we'd be. But the thing is, what we want to do is to provide the opportunity, and I'll make a very good point here. And this, Greg Brooks asked me about this, and it speaks directly to this, because he said, when we look at it, Alton's kind of restrictive with the amount of, we need an acre for each one or whatever. And a lot of other towns, if you do a multifamily, it doesn't require that. Having said that, it's just that, I was involved with this when, we proposed this a few years ago, and I've seen it work in tons of places, and this would be a real good start for us. If we wanted to say, okay, if you want to do tiny homes, you could have a few more, depending on square footage or with more square footage. It would be a calculation that we would have to work on. To me,
plus the septic has to factor into this. Septic loading.
right? Yeah, that is always a factor here.
Yep.
How much can we actually load? So
I think also, go ahead,
it's
John.
not a simple black and white thing.
Right. I think, so, Roger, to answer your question that you started up with, I'll use Eagles Rest as an example. Say you own a unit there. The town taxes you on the unit only, that you pay that. Walter, whatever his name, that owns it, he receives a tax bill for the town for the land portion of it, the developed town. And am I pretty correct on that, I think I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so their $400 park rent all doesn't go in his pocket. He's got to pay property taxes out of that and whatever else goes along with it. So must be a protective covenants portion of this, or condo docs, or, it's all that same type of stuff. That's gotta be part of this to happen. So all this stuff is spelled out.
Well, it even says in the proposed, what the state came up with for tiny houses. It says that if a tiny house is located on land of another, or say, you're renting, that unit should be taxed as real estate.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. And it should be. I mean, the town has to get,
Like the condos, or your property's taxed, and
but the condo's a little different too, because you technically own the land and the drip line in which you own your condo. And then you have the common areas
through the association.
that will be taxed separately.
Right, through the association.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing as if you own your own mobile home in a park.
Right.
You pay the taxes on the mobile home. Your rent helps pay the taxes on the land that the owner is holding.
Yeah. And I think they even do they issue deeds, or is it still, that a mobile home still considered chattel property?
No, it's a deeded property.
It's deeded, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's deeded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that changed about in the 70s, I think, somewhere around in there. Well, okay, so what we can do at this point is I think a number to start with, to work towards, and maybe we can massage it differently for, this would be 5 per 10 acres. And I think we've got to do a minimum lot size, like we did on something else, John. What did we do last year that we had to have, a minimum 10 acres to qualify?
Tiny homes and multifamilies.
Is that what we dealt with?
Not
Exactly.
tiny homes, townhouses.
Townhouses.
Is there a minimum, so say it's 5 houses for 10 acres, what's the size of, so like each house would, would there be a minimum size or a maximum size the house would be?
We don't have a maximum in that respect.
Right, and I think we would need to.
Should we, that's what, maybe, should we?
Well, that's right here.
Well, each dwelling unit is allowed 10,000 square feet, and you should be allowed a certain amount of coverage on that 10,000 feet.
Right.
Make that a limit,
Right.
Yeah,
That's what,
in setbacks.
yes,
and setbacks.
I don't think 20 feet would quite work real good because, but 10 feet for sure.
A guy at the campground is a builder. He's working on a house down in Laconia. It's 8 by 32, 3 stories high.
8 by 32.
8
Doesn't
feet
get
by
windy, just
32,
roll
and
over.
it's 3 stories high.
Storage units, or do they stack them up and weld them together or
It's
something?
stick built.
Oh, wow.
8 by 32.
8 by 32, and it's 3 stories high. Show me a picture of it. It's crazy.
You'd have been better off to buy 3 containers and stack them.
Way cheaper, yeah.
There's a whole commercial center in St. Thomas that is nothing but 40-foot sea containers.
All right.
And it didn't budge during the hurricanes at all. But anyway, let's get back on track here. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think we've settled the density and stuff for a mobile tiny house community. It's basically an RV park. Will
Yes.
we all agree on that? Okay, that portion of it is pretty well, because the density ratios are all figured out with that. And so the next thing would be the tiny house on a fixed. Topics we need to talk about will be square footage, lot size. I like the 10,000 square foot idea. I think that's pretty decent. And we've got to find out for the state what the flow ratings are, because I think, what is it, 60 or 70 gallons a day for an RV pad. And if this has a 1-bedroom house, it's 3-bedroom or 1-bedroom and a loft type of idea. I mean, I guess I've kind of looked at something, 700-ish square feet as being something that a family could live in, a family of 4, but you don't. Well, you got a loft in and stuff like this. People are going to have smaller houses, Raj, or 1,000 square. The idea is to hit a target here to make this work. This, I mean, if you want a bigger house, go buy a lot and build a house, knock yourself out.
Yeah. Well, and I was,
It's affordable,
Right.
that's what we're getting at.
Yeah.
I was down in Manchester the other day with my brother, and it's terrible. And he's in a neighborhood, you know, and I'm looking at the houses there, and I'm saying, wow, these things are small. You know, they're probably, I don't know, 30 feet by 24, you know?
An average city lot is 60 by 100. I mean,
They're 5,600 square feet,
yeah.
In
Okay.
Florida, they have, 0 lot line subdivisions where the lots are only 40 feet wide. You got a 30-foot wide house. One side of the house is right on the setback, or right on the property line, and you have a 10-foot setback to the next house. So you only got 10 feet between each house.
I
And
know.
they're 40 feet by 80 feet deep.
Yeah, and I know in Texas, they have 5-foot sideline setbacks and with a window regulation that your windows can't be opposite one another, so. You know, got a cup of sugar? Okay, so, back on track. So the tiny house on foundation, that's what we're talking about. We got a density, size, septic loading.
Foundation or a pad?
That, I would, well, either, I suppose. I would personally like to see it on a foundation, because that way you could put any mechanicals you may have. Well, you would probably go mini splits and something like that to heat them, which would be very efficient and inexpensive. Because the mini split technology, they're coming down to 10 or 15 below zero, they'll now generate heat.
Yeah, well, I guess the basement, if you're gonna have a tiny house, I guess the basement would be handy.
You
And
know?
it's an option, you know, we can discuss how we want to address that, whether we think it's not, you know, in reality, what's the difference between having a basement or having a post or a slab? To me,
That goes toward
it's really not much.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, yeah, but to go a full, let's put it this way. We could not put a inhabited building on a floating slab, correct, John?
Pardon?
Can we put a residence on a floating slab?
Yes.
We can,
Yes.
on a floating slab. Then
There's
your
nothing
answer would be right. Because if you had to have frost walls, you gotta figure you have 4-foot frost walls and a slab. Well, if you add 3.5 more feet of concrete down, you have the slab, you just move it down to the bottom, and now you have that airspace. So for 3.5 more feet of wall around that thing, you have now a functioning space down below.
A crawl space.
You could go a crawl space or go another 3.5 feet down and have a full foundation.
Right. Well, I got a price on a foundation the other day. It's 16 by 12, $5,500.
Yeah, it's awful.
For these tiny houses, I mean, that's 16 by 12, that's right in their
Yeah.
neighborhood. That's $5,500 just for your foundation.
Yep.
That's not for the
Yeah.
floor.
Well, it's not, I mean, I have $22,000, $25,000 foundations all the time lately.
That also depends on the developer. If the developer.
Yeah, again,
They could be building 5 of these at once and have the foundations poured at the same time. I mean,
That doesn't matter
Yeah.
that much.
but that thing is, that type of decision would be the developer. They're gonna do what's gonna be economically feasible, and if we say, you can do a frost wall, the rat slab, you could do a full foundation, you can do a regular slab. You know, those are the options they have to choose from, and it's their choice.
So all these things, so when you add all this stuff up, you know who's gonna be the developer? HUD. Same as Dover and all these other places. It's gonna be the government housing. 'Cause they're the only ones that can afford, they can just throw money at stuff.
You can do it, Raj.
Well, I'm throwing money at stuff I don't have.
Okay, so we also, need to put to that, construction methods on these things, so we can say what they're gonna be, what's allowable.
They have to meet,
They have to meet the
they have to
current
meet
code.
Right,
they have to meet code.
okay, then we'll just leave that alone.
I mean, there's no other way to do that. They have to meet the code.
Unless the state adopts that appendix Q before we get this all approved.
And would ever think that this same tiny house versus cabin colony would almost fit in the same mold?
I would think yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So if we took a tiny home right now, pre-built, let's call it 1,000 feet. Just amusing, trying to then do an example. And as John suggested, it could be a foundation or it could be a slab on grade, okay? Depending on what the developer wanted to do, all right? So the requirements would be that it needs to have all the codes, okay? Again, the requirements would be, we have to figure out the density, okay? So that a developer could cluster them on a, let's call it 40-acre parcel.
Yeah.
Okay? But it does, definitely, we would need to have size requirements, or minimum, maximum size requirements. Okay? I don't know if you need minimum. And are these lots deeded lots?
I would say a cabin colony would be no,
No,
but I think the other ones would,
it could be.
Would that be up to the developer too, though?
probably. I mean, we can't really discriminate on the type of ownership that people have, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
So if they want to condoize them, they
If it's a conservation subdivision, then again, you have ownership of the land, but you don't have ownership of the particular, this isn't your surveyed lot, is what I'm trying to say. That's a conservation subdivision. That you have joint ownership, you have rights of use for this and that. I'm not an expert on this, but I know these things. So it isn't like you come out and they say, yeah, this is your area, but you don't necessarily, how do I want to put it? So it would be like with a condo, the association owns the land. The Winnipesaukee Pavilion, the association owns the land.
So, John, you say you'd own your lot, but then there would be common area, land that's owned by all of the homeowners in that association?
all that green
No.
space would have to be shared equally amongst all those people.
No?
See, like, okay, let's take the Winnipesaukee Pavilion. That's a condo. There's 7 or 8 units in there. The association owns the land that it sits on, and the people own each individual unit. So that would be basically the same idea. In a conservation subdivision, you would have to have an allotted area for each unit, so they have space around it and a yard or whatever. But it's not like a traditional subdivision where you own that lot.
Right.
The association owns that.
You basically own the structure in the association.
Well,
I
I'm
always
saying,
say,
just cross the street from the pavilion and go to the campground. There it is, right there. All you own is your house. The conference
Correct.
center owns all the land.
right,
Right.
Yep.
Sort of the same concept.
But in a condo, you'd own your house, and that is limited common area. You'd also have limited common area around that house that only you can use.
Right.
traditionally,
And then there's common area, the parking, the roads, and all the open space, where everybody can use it.
Right. So I think what we're actually looking at, really considering, is to adopting maybe different types of conservation subdivisions that would be based on the size of the homes. You know, if it's going to be bigger homes, they've had more area dedicated to them. You know, I don't know. But to me, what would facilitate even tiny homes, permanent tiny homes, would be conservation subdivision. We wouldn't want to try to say, okay, now you each have to have a half-acre lot or a quarter-acre lot. Do it as a cluster.
So maybe we could avoid the cabin colony, the small house type of thing. Maybe we put size limitations on if we want to. I don't know, I'm just talking this through here. And maybe we could just condense all this in the conservation subdivision, and we could have conservation A and conservation, we could have two different types of conservation subdivisions.
Yes. Or have different yield calculations based on, okay, this one's going to be tiny homes, so here's the calculation you use for houses that are 400 square feet or under, 500 square feet or under. And here's calculations for homes that are 500 to 2,000. And then here's the calculation for homes 2,000 and up. You know, it'd be worth looking at what other places are doing, because someone else is doing this. You know, and I think that would be something we would want to definitely take a look at.
I think New Durham has a conservation subdivision ordinance that's pretty good.
And like I said, I got Meredith's. You know, Meredith does too, and I'm sure Guilford and the other towns do also. Laconia, because Laconia's got condensed, you know, places where they pack them into one corner and they've got green space. They've got conservation type subdivisions.
You could almost call Lock Lake a conservation subdivision. They have a lot of land that Lock Lake Association owns.
Yeah. I think that would really condense and simplify what we're trying to achieve here.
I agree.
Just we put the table of uses, you know, and call it cabin colony. It can be called that, you know, cabins or what have you. That all could be dealt with in the table of uses, I believe.
Well, it's got, you know, to me, cabin colony, you know, when you mention cabin colony, first thing comes to mind is like Winnebay cabins. Which we do.
Boulder Lodge hits my mind.
Huh?
Boulder Lodge is what I was thinking of because I grew up in front of it. So.
Right. You know, and that's something I think we should explore also on the recreation side of it.
Yeah. Okay.
When I hear cabin colonies, I think vacation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
so, you know.
Yes.
Weekly, monthly type of idea.
That's what that says to me. Tiny homes is where I'm gonna live, and then I'm gonna go to the cabin colony to go vacation.
So what I'm hearing
Okay,
is,
good. Yeah, good point.
if we take the conservation subdivision as an entirety, and then we have certain segmented areas, tiny homes, tiny mobile homes, but we have size requirements, okay, that it could be all encompassing into the conservation subdivision area, that a developer could look at, okay, here are the requirements if I want to build 400 or 500 square foot homes, if I can meet the requirements of this. Here's what I can do under conservation subdivision, which will minimize my costs, okay, and impact. Is what I can do for, let's call it 500 to 1,500. I'm using numbers, okay? And from 1,500 to, let's call it 2,500, and again, you know, it's a different criteria, but it's all under the conservation subdivision requirements.
Yes.
Right.
Is that what you're suggesting, John? And it sounds to me that could make it feasible, and it gives the developer an opportunity to say, okay, this is only in the rural areas, right? And I'm gonna need so much land, I'm gonna need to conserve it. Here are the requirements that the town is offering to me, okay? I'm gonna have to go through the planning board, you know, whatever, okay? For those requirements, okay? And then that takes care of tiny homes. I agree that, you know, when we talk about cabin, that we should have something that's different, okay, that has to do with seasonal rentals, you know, that cabins and those requirements, vacation kind of stuff, you know? This would be more permanency, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, that people would be staying there for a while or, you know, and then selling their homes, okay, trying to upgrade. I don't know, you know?
Well, the other thing is, you know, a tiny home, I mean, that's 2 by 6, that's insulation, that's the whole,
Or you can do 2x4 and foam.
or 2 by 4 and foam. A cabin.
Yeah, as long as you meet the code requirements, there's no.
Right, a cabin, where the seasonal, you would go the 2 by 4, you'd put your wiring in a conduit, and there's no, it's just a.
Remember what Scott said, Roger, okay, that,
Yes.
you know, our seasons are changing, okay, where they're starting to use cabins in the wintertime now. Okay, so I'm not so sure that would work,
I don't see it working.
okay, just as it being seasonal for our summer months.
So if that's the case, then just take the cabin colony and forget it, let's just do it, a tiny house. Because there's no difference, if you're gonna make the cabin a tiny house,
Well, yes.
they're both the same.
No, I disagree with you. On a cabin colony, I had talked about, let's say, 5.5 months close.
Oh, yeah, we want that,
Now, the state likes to let these septic systems rest. So I think this, and then you open for 3 months in the winter months so that people can enjoy that, then you close again, and then you're reopening, you know, May 1st, May 15th, whatever the case may be. And so it's really important to let these septic systems rest in this type of situation, but we need to let people enjoy the seasons, you know? Mud season's not so much fun.
basically it's 2 seasons, it's ski season and then summer season.
Yeah. Skiing, ice, and winter activities on the ice.
Fall foliage.
Fall foliage, we'd be
Nobody
closed.
likes to be out in the spring.
Well, the thing about it is
Mud.
you probably would close in the middle to late October, so you could pick up the foliage.
You pick up the foliage, but you I hear what.
No, you gotta be closed before that, because if you wanna be open for December for the skiing, you've
No,
got.
Yeah, but
let's put it this way, we
snow
cannot be
doesn't
open
come
more
till
than
Christmas.
1 day less than 6 months. That's the key. We cannot be open 6 months at one shot, because that way people can claim residency. We do
And
not
that we
want. What's that?
I said, and that's something we can, you know, further separate out. I know Jess said she mentioned what the Robert Knoll campground was looking at doing, having some, and his idea was just, he's gonna have some cabins that would be available only in the winter for like snowmobilers and stuff. And they would be centralized more like a cabin colony. They would have a bathroom in there, but if you want to take a shower, you go to the bathhouse type thing. So, you know, it's kind of.
I don't like that idea.
Bring your fuzzy slippers.
Yeah.
I lived it. Well, I mean, it was just, that was what we bounced back and forth, but his idea was that for that particular use is not a year-round use.
And the thing about it is I'm really trying to get a hold of Rainey to see if we can do anything with gray water gardens and things of this nature to help.
Yeah.
You know, but when you have strictly poo, there's too many nitrates and stuff like that, so you gotta be careful. You need water to make it all work.
Right. And Scott, I'm with you that it's time for this state to take a serious look at different ways of disposal and different ways of water conservation.
Absolutely. I mean, they're in the dark ages. They're 50-year-old regs.
Yeah, are there any, other states more ahead of the ball?
Oh, yeah. You go west. Number one, you go west, you know, out west of the Mississippi, there, you know, and the laws are a little different there, but water conservation and water reclamation and gray water systems and recycling, it is they're on top of it out there because they run out of water all the time.
Precious.
Well, in Florida, you'll see all these purple water pipes. That's coming from the sewer treatment plant and only for irrigation.
Yeah.
So it's reclaimed water, just used for irrigation.
Right.
So you see them on a residential house?
You see those purple pipes everywhere.
And they're provided for, they are provided for in the codes. They are
They are,
addressed in
okay.
the codes.
Maybe I'll see if I ever get a hold of Randy, maybe he'd be a good guy to bring in and talk to us.
Yeah, because
Well, we'd have a lot to talk.
He probably wouldn't want to come because he's probably getting pretty close to retirement.
He's
not-
beyond retirement, he's been there 50 years.
And he's not gonna want to go back and reinvent the wheel.
So who's second in charge? Can't get a hold of him.
I think he was,
Dale?
Yeah.
He's there, I don't know what his position is.
I found a septic plan that he signed off on from 1973.
Who, Rainey?
It's called his sister
Yeah.
Kirsten.
So,
But Randy's in charge of water in and water out, so.
yeah, I think we've got a good aim on, I think it's definitely, looking at the conservation subdivision is definitely a good way to approach the alternative housing options.
Can we get, Jess, can we get more information on conservation commission, conservation?
Subdivisions.
Subdivision.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So,
And,
yeah, the New Hampshire, Office of Strategic Initiatives, you can go on there, like, I'm gonna go on their website, and they have, that's where towns submit all their regs and all their information, and they, separate things out. So I can go on there and just, search up,
Is there anything down there that could
things like
help
that.
us, talk to us?
And, yeah, and be able to, get some information from them, because
Because
they're.
I find this, we have an idea of what we want, but I don't know if we know how to get there.
Yep.
We can get there. We've got plenty of people to guide us that have been down this road before.
Good.
Yeah, they'll have lists of towns that already have conservation subdivisions.
Conservation subdivisions in rural areas, okay? Let's let's try to classify the areas, I think.
Well, the rural zone would be one, I think rural residential is another one, that it's
Absolutely.
kind of already there, but the only problem with rural residential, where it is, it's tough to get access to it,
Yeah. But I think it's definitely something that its time has come.
Yeah. It's especially the way housing is just, I don't think it's gonna stay this way for very much longer, but it's here now and it will bounce back again and, houses
And
that,
having the opportunities available when it does, and being in sync with it, is in our favor.
yes, that is better to be proactive than reactive.
I agree.
Well, if you have it in place, and, if it's in place and we're not trying to figure out when to do it, but it's in place, the developers will eventually say, hey, Alton, we gotta find some land, we gotta find some, where we meet it, okay, and they have the requirements right here, which.
And in the conservation subdivision, there's probably setback requirements that other people have done, so we could do that, because I don't think we wanna go right up to a property line with, Mrs. Jones's $305,000 house or whatever. We've gotta be respectful of that.
Barnstead has their, they have different setbacks in Lost Lake. Every lot has a different setback. And it's governed by your lot width and your lot depth.
It might be fun to keep track of.
Yeah.
They have a whole list. So,
Wow. Okay, so I guess we boiled ourselves down to conservation/open space subdivisions.
Yeah, and it's good.
The mobile, tiny house falls under RV park. So that's already covered, so we don't even really need to discuss it unless,
But when you're talking RV park, now you're talking seasonal.
no, not necessarily. You can have year-round water in them.
What about when you roll the bus in and take the wheels off it?
Oh, it's keyword was mobile. When the wheels are off, it's not mobile.
Okay, so I can
But
roll my,
the key-
I can
the
roll my
key
bus
is-
into the tiny house neighborhood, take the wheels off?
No, you can't take the wheels off. You gotta leave the wheels on it.
No, because I want to be a tiny house.
Roger, you're not thinking of it. It doesn't fit it. You're not the Partridge Family, you know, and.
Well, what I'm saying is what somebody's going to say.
Well, see, if you come in a bus, that's clearly an RV.
Yeah,
Going on
yeah, that doesn't fit any of the categories.
A lot of these tiny houses came in on a truck.
No, they come in on a frame that stays with it. They tow them behind a 1-ton or something like that.
No, they
And
built.
Roger, we've addressed,
That's not a mobile tiny house. The key
what
word
you're
is
talking about,
mobile.
Roger,
Yeah.
what you're talking about is what we have defined as a recreational camping cabin. So we have addressed those, the kind that come in and they kind of slide them off there. Those are addressed somewhere else in our zoning ordinance. And they're not addressed as permanent housing because those are built under the 400 square feet limit to avoid HUD regulations.
That's similar to what Travis did up in Mount Major Park. That outbuilding that was a screen house and then it became more. Right next to Billy Finothy's house
Yeah.
on the railroad bed.
No, that was always the cabin, wasn't it?
No,
They kind of morph sometimes.
they do. Things evolve. Okay, so, and then I guess the cabin colony, there, I think we would need to put a maximum size on a cabin. You know,
Yeah.
because the word cabin is, you know, X amount of square, you know, you probably want to have a small 2-bedroom or something like that and a single bath. Or maybe a loft is acceptable, but, you know, there should be a 700 to 1,000 square foot maximum footprint.
So is that gonna be separate from the subdivision?
Yes, I think that has to be different.
So do we
But I think
wanna
we can
focus
use-
on both?
I think we can use a lot of the density for both. That will do it. But just, I guess you know, the seasons of the months of opening for the cabin colony. Because that way we want to promote that more as a vacation or, you know, or even, yeah, let's say that Mr. Smith wants to, you know, only come up there, and maybe he says, I want to rent that for year round. He could do that.
But this is for rental.
Well, you know,
You don't end up owning these.
you could. You could,
Okay. That's what
Yeah.
I'm asking.
yeah.
Good.
But the thing about it is again,
Not
you
live there year round,
you
yeah.
have your documentation that says, you know, let's say May 1st, the water gets turned on. And the water doesn't get turned on till May 1st. And then the water shuts off,
I mean, that's,
you know, October 30th. The water gets shut off. We open it December 15th and shut it off March 15th.
and that's what they're doing in, that's what they're doing, East Coast in Maine, you know. You can be there from May 1st until October 1st, and you're out. You know, everything gets.
Until May again.
What?
Until May, you're out for the whole winter.
You're out for the whole winter.
So they shut the water off, because the water's over foot below the
Shut
ground.
everything off, they shut the water off, okay? You're done, and you're, even though you own the home, right? And you can't have,
You can have occupancy.
you have no occupancy and no educational, privileges to the schools.
Right.
and-
That's the biggest thing is, you know, the school's the white elephant. I mean, in every town, the school's the white elephant. I mean, it's awful what it costs to educate our kids. And, you know, so by doing this, there's a tax base that you'll build, you know, because if you have 1,000 square feet, that's going to be worth some dough. And if some guy buys it for $250,000 or whatever the case may be, or he rents it, it still will have value. The assessor will find a way to give it a value, you know? And so the town gets taxation from it. But, you know, they'll have some fire and police, of course, but they won't have the school and then the highway, public, as we call ourselves, that's now. Public works won't have to plow the roads or anything. All kept private. You know, in Cabin Colony, you could probably have dirt roads in there or ledge pack roads, but you still have to have drainage calculations and all that jazz. And, you know, in the ledge pack might as well be asphalt, but if you want to keep it rustic looking, you might want to keep it with a gravel pack road.
More rustic.
Yeah, yeah.
But this would more or less be the how do we lessen the impact for development to build this? Okay, it would be under the RV
No, this would be under the cluster,
plus.
the conservation type situation.
This would be another segment of.
But
Yeah.
the road, you'll be saved on roads if you're saying ledge back is gonna save you quite a
Asphalt.
bit in road
Yep,
construction.
Would the road, like the road infrastructure be similar to like a road in a campground? Like a campground park?
yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
The thing about it is there's not anybody gonna ever come to the town and say, take over the road, because
Right.
it's here, right in black and white, this is gonna stay privately held. You know, because that's a
Except
fear,
in all-
that's what Jim Sessler worries, if you use that ugly word called the private road. You know, he says, someday someone's gonna say, I don't want my road private anymore. Well, this is privately held on one parcel, and it really, unless you do condos, it becomes more of a site plan than a subdivision. But if you use the word condos, then it's technically considered a subdivision, even though the common lands stay
Well,
common.
That's what Dover did. They didn't do a subdivision. They did a site plan.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, in Dover, I keep using them as a rep, they put 44 units on 7.5 acres.
Yeah, but they have water and sewer, Raj. That's the biggest problem for us.
And that's, you know, that's affordable for a developer.
Yep, and you know, the cabin colony where it's gonna give some time twice a year for that septic system to rest, maybe we can do something a little bit more with density
I put more.
as a benefit because the system has a chance to rest.
Right.
Resting
Okay.
for a septic system is really the greatest thing in the
Okay.
world.
Resting for a septic system, yes, it is. It's the greatest thing in the world. But they're not designed as though they're gonna rest.
No,
They're designed
they're
to-
calculated like anything else would be.
Right, so you're building the regular,
Yeah, we're just restricting the use of the times it can be used.
yeah.
So, if I'm hearing correctly, the cabin colonies, as we're calling it, or
Yeah.
whatever, would be still in the conservation subdivision arena.
No.
No,
They're separate. We're talking about a recreation that are temporary living, and then we're talking about permanent living.
okay, all right.
At least that's my view of it.
Okay, so we're separating those.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I'm glad you brought that up, John, because I was kind of thinking where you mentioned, you know, 400 to X hundred, you know, the three different categories of conservation subdivision, whether this could be the fourth chapter of that, so to speak.
That's what I thought I was hearing you say.
Well, that's kind of where I thought I was going, but then John seems like quite imperative that it's called something different.
Calling this recreational seasonal. Okay.
Yeah, more like an RV park in
Yeah.
concept, in thought process. You know, that it's just going to be a seasonal or a recreational use. It's not permanent dwelling. People aren't going to be living there with their kids. This, that, and the other thing. You know, we could still have the smaller dwelling units under the conservation subdivision, and then, you know, to me, it's always been two different animals.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we should treat that as such,
Okay.
and it's very separate.
We might be able to use the skeleton of that as a
Sure.
background for this.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's stuff in there that would go into it, but it needs to be, because it's seasonal. Right, yes. Okay.
So where you want it in the winter, your infrastructure still has to be for year round.
Yeah.
The water pipes have to be
Yeah.
below 4 feet.
Yep. But that's okay.
So how long do you think it's gonna be before they, I mean, you start talking about, conservation easement, didn't go over big the first time. I mean, so now you're saying it's for the tiny house, but now, what about me? I want to have 2 bedroom and I want it bigger than tiny.
Well, that's
as
fine.
John
You
said,
would-
you can have
we
the
make-
different sizes available to you.
Yeah. We don't just limit it to the tiny houses, Roger. We make it for a conservation subdivision, but have, like I said, different, what they call a yield plan. You might get be able to do some more tiny houses than you would duplexes.
Well, therefore, it would be up to the developer, really. Let's say if he can have 40 units, they may want to designate 20 to up to 700 square feet.
Right.
So that can be that. Then they can have this portion of the project be 1,500 square feet or whatever you decide on. So we can put them within the same thing, but the footprint changes and things of that nature depending on the size of the unit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does to me.
So therefore, we can kill multi-birds with one stone by putting in what you need to do. And there could be a mix for the developer, which I think would be attractive.
Right, as long as that maximum density,
Right,
you know,
Right.
that is dependent on what you want to build.
yep.
I think the biggest hump is gonna be the conservation easement.
Well, conservation, we're not gonna call it a conservation subdivision. You call it open
Well,
spaces.
Yeah, we could
But
give
yeah.
it a different,
Yeah, because, I mean, I agree, Raj. I mean, you know, you put lipstick on a pig and it's still
Okay,
lipstick.
so what-
Pig, right?
What should we call it? So that we know, we start.
Let's see what other towns have called it.
Yep, I agree.
Let's
Take a look.
Let's get a name for it, so that we know what the hell we're talking.
Yeah,
How about, I think when you go looking for names, you're gonna hear tiny house community. That's the name you're gonna get.
well, that's what we get. So anyway, I guess we're gonna sum this up, because I think we're almost to the point where spinning a little bit right now, is that we're gonna look at probably 2 or 3 different styles of open space subdivision. And then the second one would be cabin, colony,
Something around.
whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I don't know if cabin colony is really the word we want to use, but, you know, recreational cottages or camp, you know, I don't know.
right.
Okay, so open space subdivision.
Yeah, and that's just my using that word now until we get re-steered.
Until we get a name for it.
Yep.
And then, until we get a name for it, colony, cabin colonies.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, and that's basically,
I'll see what I can find.
and so the mobile tiny house is covered under RV. So we really just don't need to, would everybody agree with that? Paul? He's,
Still gotta be regulated somehow. Those,
Right.
those, for anything coming in on wheels under 400 square feet, gotta be certified by something. For one, it's gonna have to be registered with DOT.
right, I
And
think,
it has to be roadworthy.
right, well, and eligible, would third-party inspection be required on that, something like that, John?
They aren't required on regular RVs. The
They're
RV
not.
industry has their own set of standards that they go by, and they pretty much stick to them. But we'd have to, again, part of the concern is these things are being built in people's yards and then sold to people with approved dwelling. And
Yeah,
there
we
is
have to
no.
make sure people are safe.
You can check with the state on that, there must be some kind of regulation from the state. if someone-
Not yet.
No,
No.
there's nothing yet on this whole
And
thing.
one of the biggest sticking points is there is no regulation on the mobile ones. There is no oversight. You know,
There are
Scott,
places that do certify. There's our
Yeah.
builders that only sell houses that are or tiny houses that are certified by REVA, recreational something. or other.
Yeah, the Recreational Vehicle Industry Association or inspection, whatever,
Right.
yes, I know what you're talking about. But the guys that are building them in Maine aren't getting them certified by that, and the guys that are building them in the backyards aren't getting them certified that. The ones they're building down at the Voctech are being, we're involved, so we're looking at code requirements, but there's alternatives, stairs and stuff that you can't apply from the standard building code.
Well, maybe have a list of specs, so when someone builds it, it's 2x4 construction with foam insulation, and the floor is so thick, and also
And
the ceiling,
And that's what they're going back and forth on at the state level, at the legislature.
There is another certification place where you can, as you build it, you take pictures and document everything that you do and send it to them. They don't have a person come and inspect it. They're just relying on your photos.
Yeah. So, but that's something that is actively being looked at too, because that's, with the working in the legislature and stuff, they're trying to figure that out.
I assume that's transportation.
Yeah.
I assume that's transportation.
It could be something if you're gonna register it, you need to present.
Well, if DOT stops you, they have their rules and that,
But it's only a roadworthy vehicle, whether or not it's habitable is not their.
not their concern, they just want it roadworthy.
Right.
Yeah. Well, any trailer over 10,000 pounds is supposed to be inspected annually anyway. That
Correct.
law is already there.
Yeah, they're over 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
They're like 15, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
So.
Okay. Bill, any thoughts?
No, I'm good. We got a lot done.
Because hopefully we can, next time, I'll go, Paul, anything else you want to add? Raj? Right? Okay, the next time, let's pay attention to one of these and try to work through it. Which one would we like to work on first? Conservation ABC? That sound good?
That's our biggest night.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
I think that's the bigger of the two.
right, I agree. So, did we set up our meeting time? I think
We did. June 16th is our next meeting.
Yeah, okay. And we didn't do July. Do we want to do July while we're at it?
Might as well. We're gonna be booking up quick with CIP.
Yep. Okay, the planning board meeting is on the 20th, so want to go to the 21st? Is that good for you? Like, would you rather blow a whole week? I'm not being home at night, or would you rather come in and visit once in a
It doesn't
while?
really matter right now, because there's so many boards and committees I'm on,
You're here anyway.
I'm here at least twice a week anyways.
Okay, would the 21st of July work for everybody?
It doesn't work for me, I won't be around
Okay, what would work better for you?
the following week,
Following week?
All right, let me pull up the town calendar real quick.
after the 26th.
Okay, the 28th? Oh, you're gonna check the town calendar?
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now.
By the way, was I supposed to read this COVID thing before we started?
You did.
Okay.
You're fine.
Did a great job.
You say so.
July
Is this a
July
problem?
28th
I think we have it
28.
memorized by now. I've heard it
appears to be
times.
free.
Okay, but we could also make it a hiking room. Or can we not distance? Well, we should be over.
By then, it's open, the town hall will be open.
I don't even know. Let's just book it for that day. and
Okay,
then
we'll figure it out.
from there.
July 28th, okay,
I don't
Tanya.
even know what to tell you on that right now.
So July 28th is 6
July
p.m.
28th, 6 p.m.
Okay. Great.
All right, so I have a question for everybody. Did anyone have a chance to talk to, our advisors? The people we're gonna reach out to, like you were gonna reach out to someone?
Yeah, I
I
tried.
think, did anybody have a
Okay.
chance to do
I
that
have-
so I can invite people in and start kind
Yeah.
of being able to schedule someone to come in and chat with
I
us?
have the Tiny Home Association, people pulling things together, okay? And I hope to have it to you this coming week, so that you can disseminate it to the guys, okay? It's interesting, but boy, doing all of this out in the west. It's on.
And I don't think we'd have to bring Rainey in for the alternative housing, because standard septic loading would just be the case.
Okay, I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, well,
See if anybody-
but I definitely would like to get Rainey here for
Yeah.
the other thing, because with resting and things of this nature.
It needs to be badgered.
Huh?
It needs to be badgered above their regs.
Yeah, I know.
The director of the Association of Tiny Homes, said that he'd be more than willing to come and sit with us and just discuss the pros and the cons and what they've gone through.
Is this somebody in New Hampshire?
No. Not of, Pennsylvania.
Come all the way up here?
Well, he could Zoom.
Yeah, that's probably what he was thinking.
And yeah.
Yep.
He said he'd be more than happy to meet with us.
Oh, good, well, he can stay at your house for a couple of nights and, you know.
I'm gonna put him in a tiny home. A whole tiny home, he's gonna work with them. Okay.
Okay, well, hopefully we get a little bit more on track here. I think this discussion we've had is really good, but we really need to buckle down and start to put pen to the
I need
paper.
to contact that guy in Wakefield. Remember, I paid him $150 for that class, and you and I were gonna go.
Right.
And then COVID came, and he never had the class.
That lucky COVID.
Well, he's building tiny houses over in Wakefield.
Wow.
You come here and
Wonder it's not in Ospey with no zoning.
you can build them anywhere and put them where there is no zoning.
Yeah.
That's where everybody online is telling everybody to go up north beyond Lincoln, up that way where there's no zoning. You can put it on anything.
Building them, but he's not putting them in.
He's not putting them anywhere, he's building them.
He's just building them.
So you just go pick it up and bring it to
Yeah.
us.
Right.
Yeah.
But he could discuss on how he's being watched as he sells these. What does he do when he sells it? You know, you get a specification list.
I
You
thought
got-
you were gonna say in the middle of the night or something.
You got, you're putting in the insulation to meet a certain code. You gotta be warm.
Yeah, I'd like to work on that. That would be a good presentation.
John, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I'm all set at the moment. I think we've got headed in a good direction here.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. I think you were definitely a big help.
Well, I appreciate it.
Amelia, you have anything else for us, there, girl? Okay, Jess?
I don't, I just was wondering now if you had the chance to talk.
Okay, well, I will continue to try to get a hold of Randy to warn him at least, but, I think I can get his cell phone.
And we have minutes.
Oh, yeah, oh, look at that, we have minutes. Okay.
Well,
We're not leaving.
if you guys are at that,
God damn it, I got these things done.
All caught up.
if you guys are at that point, I'm gonna sign off if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
have a good evening, John.
Bye, John.
All right, take care.
Any info, any, thing on this that looks like we missed? It looked okay to me, because we just really kind of chewed the fat, but
Yep, I just listed everything in the table right there, and
that's a great table too, by the way, thank you. That's gonna be good to us to use as a checklist.
on things, yep.
Yeah, if you can kind of keep that as part of our stuff, that packet every week, or every month, because, that definitely is a good checklist for us.
I will make a motion, Mr. Chairman, okay, that the minutes seem to be complete to me, okay, and that, we approve them.
I'll second.
Seconded motion by Frank, seconded by Bill to approve the minutes of April 28th, 21. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Bill, aye.
Roger, aye.
Scott, aye.
Frank, aye.
Thank you. Approved. There you go, Jeff.
That was deep.
Yeah, she's gonna
Mr. Chairman.
grab us by the hair to the back of our
I
neck.
would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
So moved.